Well, actually, I like to go back to the cover, your cover image. I wanted to say some word. To me, this image is beautiful. Only one thing is wrong, the building is in the water, right? It's surreal, it's surrealistic. It's really beautiful. For me, I can bring my nostalgic feeling about this kind of landscape. It's flood, water, and you see opportunity here, you see beauty, opportunity, productivity. So opportunities, you can catch fish here, right? It's really amazing. This will bring me back to my childhood, living in a village. It happened like that many times, yeah. So I'm going to talk about, the next image is about go back to my lecture, yeah. Yes. The spongy city. I think Adrian have a fairly nice setup for me to continue this subject. The spongy city and the symbiotic solution to urban water issues. And particularly I wanted to say is a revival of the ancient wisdom of living with water. As you everyone knows that we have all these problems globally, but particularly in China. If you use these kind of images, you will see the problem here in Australia is just trivial. It's just nothing. So if you can solve the problem here in China, you virtually can solve any problems in the world. Yes, 75% of water is polluted. And two-thirds of Chinese city is under the threat of flood. And again, these two-thirds of Chinese cities at the same time under this risk of drought every year. So that's a problem. And again, of course, we have other problems beyond just water, but they are related totally. So it's an issue of survival. It's not an issue of beauty, not an issue of comfortability. It's about survival. But conventionally, we invest so much money, invest so much energy, try to solve this problem by this kind of gray infrastructure this morning, like I just mentioned, in Europe and particularly in China. In the last 4 decades, we consume 50% of world cement and 30% of steel and 30% of coal to build all this infrastructure, to build all these cities, and like that. And we say, I will quote, this all from Western technology, industrial technologies. But we forget this, what we have built up in the past 5,000 years, the wisdom we have lost. And we have forgotten the art of survival and the wisdom of living with water. And this kind of wisdom have been gained through thousands of years of experience of life and death. This is just one of millions of these cases in China. 4,000 years ago, a whole village was buried under the flood, under the mud. The whole village. And at the moment when she, the young mother, was buried under the mud with her baby in her arm, and she raised her head, calling for help. As we today, many still have the same gesture, calling for help, calling for God for help. And this God was nobody else but the landscape architect. The planner. And as the planner, who was the first king selected or elected by the people, becomes the first king. He knows how to plan. He knows how to divert water, and he knows how to develop the city to avoid the flood, and select the right crops to grow at the right place. His name is Da Yu, the Great Yu, And because of this, as mentioned, the life and death experience, we were able to invented all these technologies, including this compass. Now, the compass in China was invented 2,000 years ago, about. and never been used for navigation. Now today we use the compass for navigation, but the Chinese invented the compass for sighting, for selecting the safe place to live. That's why the whole nation, the whole landscape in China was carefully planned and designed to locate to where to allocate the cities, the villages, or even the tomb, even the graveyard. It's called as geomancy. You can see all the temples here in this picture is carefully selected, try to avoid all these kind of disasters, water particularly. And this is just one of the millions of villages carefully located between the mountain and water and the fields. So you'll be able to survive without destroying the natural system and without destroying the arable landscape. And all the cities, you can see, all the cities in China is built along with or to be adaptive with the natural water system. So that they can survive. And even in the Yellow River Basin, where the river in 2,000 years, wiped the whole China's North Plain, the Central Plain. And all the cities being able to adapt to this kind of flood. So the cities are built in the water, or let water go into the city. So live with water. Live with water, you can imagine, to be able to survive. And also because of such an experience, the knowledge being built up, we are able to build engineering, but prudent engineering, so that we are not to be offensive to the water, but at the same time be able to use water wisely. So this is a system, all man-made. I like the idea of design the nature, or design the ecologies, or design. These are all designed. 2,000 years ago, the Chinese built this dike system, and use very simple technology, bamboo and gravels to divert water to irrigate the whole basin in Sichuan basin, and everywhere. This is in Shanxi province. You can see how the water are distributed. Water is a meager resources in China. We have only 8% of fresh water, but of global fresh water, but we have 20% of population. So, in average, China or overall in China is in shortage of water. So here I'll see how the water are managed, diverted, distributed equally among individuals, among the peoples. And we have developed this whole peasantry or skills, farming skills. You can see how the water are retained, irrigate, using for irrigation, and be able to use around the season. We have monsoon climate in China, basically dominated by monsoon climate. So we have 3 months of rainy season, and the rest of the time are in shortage of water. So you can see how the water are retained, stored, and used, recycled. So it become productive. The whole landscape become productive. This is 2,000 meters above sea level on the slope terraces. You can see how the rice is grown here, and makes landscape productive. And this is in marshland. Pearl River Delta used to be a marsh. So we have developed this living water skill to be able to cultivate this landscape. Use very simple pond and dike system. So we dug out the dirt to create a pond for fishing, for cultivating fish, and create a dike for mulberry or bananas, sugar canes, to make a productive and safe, secure, safe to live with water, and to be beautiful. But also we have the knowledge to carefully select plants. You can see you have dry crops, we have wet aquatic rice and bananas, to live with water and to rotate according to the season. Monsoon season, grow rice. Dry season, grow sugar canes. It's adaptive to this kind of climate. And fertilizing. Now we developed this wisdom to deal with fertilizer, waste of human beings and animals and domestic animals. And this fertilizer go back to the field and to be cleansed, the whole village to be cleansed through the process of fertilizing, so that the nutrient will not go into the water. And this nutrient today we define as pollutions. So that's a story I remember as a childhood to how can we solve today's urban problems, urban issues. So it's time now to revive and upgrade the ancient wisdoms of living with water. Now that means we need to rebuild this solution, rebuild this system. It's a symbiotic solution to urban water issues. Create green infrastructure. Today, as all the speakers mentioned about green infrastructure. Now, the green infrastructure is a structure. The key is a symbiotic, integrated, not monofunctional engineering solution, not a single-minded solution. Integration. So that's the key. That's the key word. And that's the key for sponge city. You can see the green sponge is basically building the green infrastructure. Sponge have no visible structure. Imagine the sponge is resilient. It's made of small, no structural holes. So you didn't see any connections, but in deep, it's totally overly connected. So that's the idea. And now it's been promoted by the president nationwide. You can imagine when the president say, we're going to build a sponge city, and what's that will happen. Right? That's a sponge city. Basically, 3 key meanings for sponge city. Retention, cleansing. Now that's important. Cleansing in China is particularly important. And permeable, permitting to recharge the aquifer. That's the 3 key meanings of sponge city. Myself is one of the player of the first player of these keywords, a sponge. This is a book, The Theory and Practice of Sponge Cities. And this is a system. I like the system, top-down system. And we talk about bottom up. This morning we're talking about bottom up. Now, the first part I'm talking about top-down system because it's functional, it's very efficient, particularly when in China, I remember the first landscape architect was the king. Remember that. So if you become king, you'll be able to top down the idea of sponge city. So that, I think, make the whole system work in China. This in the past 20 years is a Turenscape project in China. In 200 cities, we're practicing for 20 years, and we built basically more than 1,000 projects. It's everywhere. It's almost everywhere in China. But I want to talk just 2 strategies. How can we develop the sponge city? Not just in the city, but nationwide. As I mentioned, it's about the continental, it's about the globe, it's about the whole nation. How can you retain the water, keep the water, clean the water, and recharge the aquifer? Because we already destroyed the whole hydrological system. So we had to fix it, but fix it at national scale. So this is across the scale, large, small, large, medium, small. So it's and rebuilding the ecological infrastructure. So the first is planning. We need a plan tool to solve the problem. And this must go to the policies, the national policies, the city council policy, and certainly the provincial policies. Now this map become part of this national policy. We did research first to see how a national sponge system, I call it a national sponge land system, can be built into our national landscape. Imagine the first map show you that, look at this, and this water system you can see. We analyzed it, and we found that we just only need only less than 1%, 0.8% of the land to deal with annual flood. So if you just let less than 1% to nature, to water, you virtually have no flood. Right? Annual flood, I mean. Maximize, I mean, it is a worst situation. We are talking about the climate change. The worst situation, you only need 6% of the national line to give to the water. So that's a big picture. So it's affordable. Dealing with climate change or dealing with a flood, national scale flood, is affordable. So that's why we developed this national sponge system. All the green, the dark green area is a red line. We call it red line. Now become national policy to draw red line at national scale, which means definitely you should keep those green space in order to keep the nation secure in terms of flood. And the light green is a resilient place. I mean, there's a place which you have to deal with water. You can be both. It's a kind of buffer area. So this is a national picture. You can see basically if you keep those area, you can keep the storm water as much as possible, and you can avoid all the flood which we are fighting against so much with so much energy, so much concrete. We can totally to be free if we can keep those. At a regional scale, this is Beijing. At a regional scale, in Beijing, in the last 40 years, expanded 7 times. You can imagine, Beijing expanded 7 times. And the groundwater dropped 40 meters. 40 meters. Groundwater dropped 40 meters almost. But so all the rivers, all the rivers are dry. But the street, you see, become river during the rainy season. It's very ironic. Yeah, ironic. And today, people talking about we are going to build thicker pipes, storage tank. I like very much. Thank you for the morning talk. Because they want to learn from how the European built the city, how the Japanese built the city. Under the city, they said Japan have a huge storage tank. Yeah, so we're going to build a huge storage tank. Totally mistake. So we say no. So gray infrastructure will not solve the problem, particularly in the monsoon climate. So that's why sponge city is become put on the table. 2012, 79 people died on the street in Beijing city, the capital. 79 people died because of flood, urban flood. People died on the street, in the cars, because of flood. So we analyze it and see that where people died in these places. And historically, these places supposed to be wetland, supposed to be given to the water. So the planning is done before the flood, actually. So we did actually the sponge city say we need to integrate the stormwater management, habitat, trail, bicycle system, pedestrian trail, and the cultural heritage, and integrate them together to create this green infrastructure. So sponge city is not just about water. It's about integrative solution to all these cultural and environmental problems we happen in the city, including pedestrian system, should be integrated into this sponge system. So sponge system is a resilient solution overall. So instead of exploring the city like that, which happened in China in past 4 decades, we propose that the city should be built upon this green infrastructure or the sponge system. Medium scale. Now this is a build project. I want to show you this is about 10 square kilometer in size. It was designed in 2008 and built a couple years ago and been tested by the flood. So instead of following the conventional model of leveling the ground and build this pipe, sewage and drainage system, we say that we don't need a drainage system. We don't need pipe system. Because look at this map. All the pond system already here. Farmers did it. For 2,000 years, the farmers dug out all these ponds to regulate the drainage, the water system, the water, monsoon climate, keeps water in the monsoon season, and they use it during the dry season to cultivate the landscape. Now that's the heritage. So if you keep the heritage, you virtually can avoid all this flood, urban flood in the city. So we integrate this into a new, but based on the ecological or existing heritage system. So the pond, existing pond, linked with pedestrian greenway systems. So I call it negative. We can reverse whole process. Before you level down the ground, we build the green infrastructure first. Then decide where to use the land for development. And build the city without drainage pipes. No drainage pipes. Only landscape as a drainage system. The first grade, the second grade, and this whole river canal system to become part of the village, part of for the city. Back 2,000 years ago, the Chinese book, the classics about farming, says that if you have 20% land for the water, you will be safe. You will get prosperous before you're cultivating the land. Now that's the rule. That's the rule based on the experience of the farming. So that's, and in today the Chinese code says that the green space must be minimum green space in the city should be 30%. So we have 30% of green space allow you to build the sponge system. So we didn't we didn't cost more land, right? It's within the framework of the legal system. So we built this sponge on the street. That's built. You can see from that's the roof, and this is in the village, in the individual community. And once the water run out, you get this filtration system. The water can be cleansed, dirt clean, and the downstream is actually a reservoir, potable water reservoir. So this is a system, is all built. No drainage pipe. And been tested last year, because last year's whole city of Wuhan almost been flooded by this storm water. And this area is safe. We tested. So it's again, it's ancient wisdom, but it's been upgraded and it solves urban problems. Now that's about the planning. And the second part I'm going to discuss about is engineering, the design. And some key strategies in building green sponge. 4 points. Retention, slowdown, adaptation, cleansing, biological cleansing, and productive use of it. These are integrative. They should be integrated. They should be happen at the same time. So the first strategy or first case, I'll show you how the green sponge to solve the problem at the source, at the beginning. Create sponge in the city. Retain it. Instead of a piece of land, we just retain it, keep water, simple. And we learn from Ziki. As I said, when a marsh happens, you create a pond and a dike and create a really safe, secure sponge system. That's the land we have in Harbin in North China. It's about 33 hectares. It's a huge piece of land. And surrounded by all this development. They want to build a park. So what kind of park? So this park, we say we need only do this periphery area. And they use cut and fill strategy. Cut and fill strategy. Simple. And put people above it. And let water go into it. So it's a filtration process. Cleanse it, So there's dirty water and clean water, and go into the middle. And we just leave the middle part, the lower part, alone. Like nature takes process, nature work. So that's a map. And that's the rendering you can see. That's only need one machine. That's simple. Dug and pale. So create this kind of landscape. Pond is a mound, dike. So put a tree on the mound and let wetland plants evolve in the pond. So that's it was built in 2009, and 2 years later, you can see abundance of adaptive willows, adaptive shrubs come out in this pond system. This was before the site, 2009, and 2 years later, you can see 3 years later, like that. And the development, of course. In 2011, no building yet, and all come out, abundance of buildings. So the process of building a sponge or ecological infrastructure is also a process of building the city. It's capitalized, actually. This sponge can be capitalized through all this development. So people will ask, is sponge expensive? No, it's actually produce money capitals. And that was built, and 2 years later, you can see. So it's resilient, it's adaptive. Birds come in, yeah. Hundreds, thousands of birds come into the middle of the city. And diversity of, it's a diversity of species coming into the center of the city. That's the center of the city. People use the pedestrian system above it. Now, this is a large park in the middle of the city. And this can be done at your backyard. This is one very small garden, rain garden, I did a couple of years ago in France, near Paris. You can see we can solve the problem in your backyard also. Very simple idea, collect stormwater, create a pond, and a filtrating system. Use water, and just turn the water into an amenity and solve the problem at the same time. These are bamboo sticks, and this a small rain garden in the middle of the community. You can see that's a little, very simple, very inexpensive solution. So we tested, and we say that we don't need even 20%. We only need 10% of green sponge in the city to solve the urban inundation problem in North China, where the precipitation is about less than 1,000 millimeters. You need only 10% of green space to solve the problem. So what about the second strategy? It's about the slowdown process. All modern monofunctional engineering is try to speed up. You can see several cases here we have discussed in the morning. All speed up because it's easy to calculate. It's easy to build, and it's really functional, fast, efficient. But that's only one function, away, right? So we want multifunctionality. We want to symbiotic solutions. So this situation is a city about the same size as Copenhagen, 6.6 million people in southwest China. Polluted, channelized the river. You can see stormwater issue, wetland being destroyed. So we say that we want to slow down the water process, recover the natural system, but at the whole system, including the rivers that run through the city, and all these recover all these drainage system, green it, and also put all this sponge, put green sponge wherever possible, wherever the water will merge, and build into the communities. So that's the whole system. This whole idea about sponge is created like resilient water system, hydraulic system, but it's a system. And they use very simple ideas, simple technologies, field making and farming. We learn from this. As I said, we know how to do it. And we can do it very cheap, very easy. It's art. It don't have to be precisely scientific. It's just common sense. And it don't have to be really use any machine. It's very simple. Yeah? That's the idea we got lost. You can see, look at this globally. And you see globally. Southeast Asia, when you look at Mexico, when you look at any ancient culture, the whole globe surface has been changed by farming. Right? And this is a technique. It's so simple. Cut and fill. Just cut and fill. Use very simple energy and power, simple tool. So we learn from that. So create this system. Terraces, pond and dike system, and transform this whole landscape in the city. Remove all the concrete. You can see that this was built based on this idea, engineering idea. Speed up. So we slow down, transform, you can see. And fish come back. It's just so quick. Just 2 years' time, fish come back. And this was before also. Channelize the river system, speed up water, and we slow down again, turn the river into a pond system. And this was before also. So speed up river, polluted soil and garbage dump, and we introduce this pond and dike system. Yeah, this is a knowledge, and slow down. Connecting all hundreds of pond system, turn the speed river into slow wetland system, and we basically solve all the problems. So pollution, retention of water, mediating, regulating water from monsoon climate to dry season. So this and clean this up, you can see. And also a park, a beautiful park, and be used by thousands of people every day. So that's the second solution, slow down. When you slow down, then the nature will take over. The nature will have opportunity to solve its own problem, to remove all the nutrients and to revive this habitat and the vegetations. So the third strategy is to adapt. Adapt at the sink. When the water goes to the lower part, the lower reach of the river, you can just do nothing. You just adapt it. You cannot build walls against that. But people always build walls. Tried against this force of nature. The force of nature cannot be enemies. They should be taken as friends. So that's the solution. This was before, this was after. I want to show you how actually as this morning and afternoon we have all these cases. And this case, they certainly again based on the understanding about the water force. That's 10-year flood, 20-year flood, 50-year flood. So nature don't need many places, right? As I said, only 0.8% for annual flood, or 6% for 100-year flood. So just let nature take over. So this is a big river. We did, and let nature come into it. This was before. Very, very well done engineering piece. Very well done. You can see, yeah. But too dangerous. Too dangerous. Yeah, hard. It's my by the way, it's in my own home city. So they believe me. They trust me. So I totally remove all this concrete and then retreat. So this will be 10-year flood, 20-year flood, 100-year flood, and this kind of retreat is learned by farm. As I said, when I look at my childhood is spent in this area for 15 years. So I know how flood come into my village. It's okay, we all get excited when we see flood coming, because the fish come to our fields, fish come to the pond, and you can catch fish. Yeah, as soon as the village is above the water level, that's fine. So this is the idea, how can we design following the contour and following the water force. And it's really been tested. You see, flood coming. This is a 100-year flood. It's just after the park being built, the flood coming. So all the media get it so furious. They say, it's a park just built, why being flooded? You waste so much money. But 2 weeks later, you will see they become like that, right? Silted, fertilized, and nurtured, water, and become so beautiful. You see, when dry season is also fun. So that's become a very good example how the resilient city can be built, even at this kind of scale, even this kind of river. I mean, that's a large river. So the fourth strategy, if the water is dirty, what are you going to do? Certainly I don't want to talk about the heavy metal, so we need to deal with the industrial technologies. Yeah. But what about all the fertilizers? All the rivers, as I mentioned, being polluted by all this overuse of chemicals, of fertilizers. And so learn from these farming technologies. Farming. Filtering through the plant, we can clean the water. So by cleansing, we actually producing biomass or food system. That's a project in Shanghai, dirty water into clean water by a park. This is a linear park. It's 1 mile long. One drip of water to run through the process, come out, it take 1 week. Basically, take 1 week. But daily, every day, it produces 2,400 cubic meter of water. 1 hectare, we tested, 1 hectare of wetland can produce 800 cubic meter of water from really dirty, we call it 5th grade water, into swimmable, not potable, swimmable, dirty, not so dirty, I mean clean water can be used for daily use, for toilet and for watering, for swimming, for use. So that was the site. This was 2008. You can see the site, Huangpu River. I think Adrian's project may be somewhere over there. Yeah. So this one is during the Shanghai Expo, the industrial site, very dirty soil, dirty water, and also is a flood wall. So we remove the flood wall and turn this into a 20-year flood zone. So that we can create an inner river, an inner wetland. So this inner wetland will become the water cleansing system. And this is a cascade wall. This wall is built for aeration, producing oxygen into the water. So a cascade fall and create oxygen. Now that's the wall here, and here is a filtrating process. So wetland terraces, man-made terraces. Learn from farming. This was process and build. That was a site before, and terraces and build. And also we wanted to be educational, so that the terraces will build like that, so that people can see how different bands of plants can be planted here. And also testable. So we have 10 points for testing how the water become cleaner and cleaner. And so that's some details, filtrating details. And so after 1 mile, the water comes out, you can see it's crystal clean. It's really touchable, crystal clean. And the whole process is productive and harvesting. So you have to harvest the biomass. These are weeds, become animal feed, also can be used for fertilizer. And also productive in terms of biomass and biospecies, diversity as a site. And also we tested. So it's not only producing beauty and food, but also producing data. So this data makes this case replicable, implementable at different scales, at different areas. So that's the fourth clean the water through the ecological or biological process. Now, the fifth strategy is how actually can we use water to solve other problems, including soil. As I mentioned, we have a really serious problem in the city pollution, and it's the soil. Two-thirds of Chinese cities have the problem of brownfield soil. This is the situation in Tianjin again. This is the case in Tianjin, heavily polluted, alkaline. Basically, it's just so alkaline. Nothing can easily grow here. But nature actually tells us how alkaline soil, if they mix with some kind of water, fresh water, they can develop kind of habitat, vegetation. So learn from that, we created this pond system. Now this pond system have different depths. So it became an experiment. This was done 2008. Again, so after the past 8 years, we learned that actually we can use the storm water or rainwater, because the rainwater is acidic acid, and the soil in Tianjin is alkaline. pH value is 9. So we can actually use the acid water to mix with the alkaline soil and cleanse it, and also develop this pattern, spectrum of habitat. And that's the process of building this pond system. And use garbage dump also. It was a garbage before. 3 years later, you will have this kind of landscape. It's a designed system. It's designed, but let nature take over. Designed nature. Here in the winter, fall, you will see the native reeds, native grass. All this is just messy nature. But people love it. It's framed messy. It's not just messiness messy. It's ordered messy. So and we tested also. My PhD students actually did all this research to see in the past 5-8 years how the habitat changed, how biodiversity increased, and the native species come back into the city. And finally, so these are about the retain water in the source, slow down in the process, and adapt at the end, at the sink, and cleanse it and use it. Now this is all top-down system, beginning from the planning at the regional or national scale, and be executed at all the way to the urban level. Now what about bottom-up? So this is a bottom-up case. My own home. I want to show you just because I want to test it that this can also work. So this is a normal apartment building. I bought 2009, and this was, in that case, this was at that time, the balcony, the roof. So I bought the level. So the idea is that how can we transform this kind of building, this kind of housing, because it's average, the same. In China, we have 50 billion square meters of building, and only 1% of those buildings are energy efficient. So if we can transform this massive building into green building, we can virtually save 30% of energy consumption in China. And we can solve the problem of the urban water issue in some part. You can see. So we collect stormwater and the solar energy and irrigate the balcony and transform the balcony into a vegetable garden. And this water also go into the building to create a living wall. The living wall will also function as as air conditioner. So this is a process we, along the season, grow all the vegetables that was built. Stormwater tank, collected, and irrigate all these vegetables. Every other week, every other day, I have a plate of salad from this garden. You can see that's That's fairly productive. And also I have a small ornamental garden also. Here's a stormwater, there's a gardenia, here's my bedroom here. Yeah, so it's open to the garden. And amazingly, you can actually let the water go into your living room, into a living room. Now this is a living wall irrigated by the stormwater above it. It's recycled, reused. There's a water tank here. I mean a water body here. And it's just a little small pond. And it's growing. It's growing. It's natural takeover. Nature takeover. Again, it's not those walls in the airport you're seeing. Those are quite ornamental. You know, it costs a lot of money, a lot of energy. But this wall is very simple. It's porous, sponge, porous limestone. First year, 2010, 3 years later, you'll see the community build up. And 3 years ago, you like that. And the next one is today. Yeah, it take over. All ferns take over. No maintenance. The only maintenance is the pump and the stormwater collected. So so this become educational place. That's me. I give lecture to all the visitors because it become a visitor center now. People come here to learn about how they can transform their building into green building in terms of energy consumption and also stormwater. Because 30% or at least 20% of surface is covered by roof in Beijing. You can imagine. I collect 50 tons, 50 cubic meters of 52 cubic meter of stormwater from the roof. I mean, used annually, recycled. And then I can produce 32 kilograms of vegetables. And also, I can save 2,000 kilowatts of energy because this wall function as air conditioner. So in the summertime, I didn't turn air condition. This wall will cool off the living room. And this wall can also produce something called a geosmell. Geosmell, some experts know that. And the geosmell is a gas. It's a gas produced by the stormwater and the storm. And this gas is a cure for depression. You know, this has been tested by the American science. There's a paper about how this gas can function as a cure for depression. So this is a small solution. A small change, but it solves the big problems. These are all the data we collected from my own building. So if we every building, 50 square meters of buildings covering China, we can virtually save all this water system in China, all the river system. We can virtually demolish all these electric dams because they are so destructive for the water system in China. So it's about symbiotic solution. This symbiotic solution can begin at your home. It's related to air, it is related to energy, it is related to biodiversity, the habitat, and the human certainly habitat in the city. So to conclude, so after 4 decades of furious urbanization and industrialization in China, we are suffering serious problems. We run out of all ecological capitals, such as water and all this pollution, the problem as mentioned. So we need a revolution. The revival and upgrade of this ancient wisdom of living with water. This means we need to build a symbiotic ecological infrastructure to provide ecosystem services. So not just about water, it's about production, provision, regulation, life supporting, and cultural and spiritual aesthetics. This we call a green sponge system. Thank you. Yeah.